Welcome to Real Talk, Real Estate Discussions with Andrew Kirsch. In each episode, Andrew interviews industry leaders. We'll hear their real-time opinions on today's market, their background and unique career highlights, and guidance for newcomers into the industry. You can find this show at spillarkirsch.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Now here's the host of Real Talk, Andrew Kirsch.
Episode 51 of Real Talk. I want to first give a shout out to my partner, Jeff Sklar, on his podcast, The Practice of You. An interesting podcast, discussions with attorneys and other professionals on how to maintain a work-life balance. So I encourage all my listeners to subscribe and listen to Jeff's podcast. On this week's podcast of Real Talk, we have Jack Ryan, the founder of Rex Homes. Now, it's not Jack Ryan, the Tom Clancy character who saves the world, the CIA operative, but Jack Ryan, who's had an interesting career, started in finance at Goldman Sachs, founded Rex Homes, really as a company to disintermediate the residential brokerage industry. And as you will hear in the podcast, after certain tactics that Zillow and the National Association of Realtors took, they are no longer in business and they're part of litigation that has really become front and center in the news with respect to brokerage commissions. It's an interesting discussion on the residential brokerage industry. I work with a lot of residential brokers, so I hope to have a residential broker on following this podcast to contrast what Jack Ryan is saying with respect to the industry. I hope you enjoy my podcast with Jack Ryan.
Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm here with my good friend, Jack Ryan. Jack, how are you?
Hi, Andrew. Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And so, Jack, where do I find you today?
I'm in Austin, Texas today.
I love it. Well, I know a lot of folks from LA. I know you used to live in LA and Malibu area, have moved to Austin. We could talk about that as well, but I wanted you to come on, and you're so gracious to come on because I know it's a busy time for you. And you know, my podcast usually focuses on commercial real estate, but in the last couple months, there's been a tidal wave, a sea change in the residential market with respect to the residential brokerage community. Before we get into all of that, I know you're the CEO and founder of Rex Homes. So why don't we first start and educate my audience, what is Rex Homes, and then we can go on to the recent court cases with respect to brokerage commissions.
Yeah, so Rex Homes is the digital alternative to the residential real estate agent. And that sounds like a mouthful, but just think about Uber to taxi dispatchers, Expedia to travel agents, TD Ameritrade or Schwab for stockbrokers. We were doing the exact same thing, taking the fees down to zero for the brokerage of homes. Now, Andrew, your audience and you are asking to yourselves right now, because you guys are really smart, how do you make money at zero? Well, just like TD Ameritrade and other firms like that, when you buy a home or sell a home, there's all these other things that happen at the same time that you have to do: escrow, title, mortgages, home insurance, moving. And in the book that we put together, also managing the home, which we can talk about more, because guys like Andrew Kirsch should not be managing their own home. And so you can charge zero for the brokerage and charge market rates or less for all the other services and make plenty of money. So we're doing great. We're going public about $1 billion in 2021. And just as we were doing that, Zillow, very canny timing, joined the National Association of Realtors, and then we got shut off all their default pages. And so that was our demise, because everyone kind of goes to Zillow and Trulia to make sure that the home they're looking at is for real, et cetera. Anyway, so now we have this big lawsuit. It's Rex versus Zillow and the National Association of Realtors under the Sherman Act.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Andrew, I'll stop there for 1 second because I know I'm going on too long, but you'll say, well, what's the Sherman Act issue? There's a cartel here. Everyone charges 5.5%. I can look at that more later, but it's the worst cartel in the United States. I have the data in terms of dollars taken from middle-class Americans and sent over to someone else. And so it's, we catalyzed what I think is the biggest antitrust lawsuit, I think, in the history of the U.S. Which sounds like an overstatement, but I have the receipts.
Well, my residential brokerage friends may not be happy with me of having you on, but it's amazing. And the 99% of my deals are in the commercial world, office, large apartments, retail centers, industrial, and brokerage commissions. I would fluctuate and be fluid based on purchase price, and in the deal size that we often transact in, maybe 1 to 2%, sometimes even less than 1%. How is it that this 5 to 6% commission, regardless of purchase price and regardless of location, has been the norm for decades?
Andrew, the simple answer is, if you go to Las Vegas and you see a body levitating, there's probably strings. I'm just telling you, it's not really happening, Andrew. There's some strings or wires that are keeping this thing over the stage.
And when I went, as an aside, when I went to the U2 concert at the Sphere, I think I did see bodies levitating, and I don't know, maybe it was some other reasons for that. But anyway.
All data I have says there are probably strings or wires levitating that body. And same with prices. Prices do not just stay the same no matter what and levitate. And let me just go through, when I first went to visit with the U.S. Department of Justice, saying, I think we got a problem on our hands. This is before the industry and the cartel ganged up on us under a violation of the Sherman Act, in our view. I just went through this following analysis with them, which you might get a kick out of. Why are residential real estate fees in the U.S. 3 to 4 times higher than almost any other developed country in the world? This is your question about how to get this way, right? But what is this way? 5.5% in the US and 1.5% in the UK or Sweden or Norway or Singapore or Hong Kong. Pick your country. Why would that be true? That seems odd, doesn't it? And why is the labor input of the residential real estate agent down 40% over the last 20 years? No one, Andrew, you're too young to remember this. There used to be some agent would drive you around in a car to show you homes in LA or the Palisades or something, right? And they took all this time. Now no one does that anymore, mostly. They're on Zillow. So the labor inputs are down, but the price stays the same. Has that ever happened in any other industry? And why is it always the same fee? Whether it's, as you had said before about commercial real estate, why is it, whether it's a $200,000 home, a $2 million home, or a $20 million home, the fee is 5.5%? And why is it, I don't know, Andrew, how you pay your people at your firm, but why is it 5.5%, whether it's a first-year associate or a 10-year partner? Is that how it works at your firm, that the hourly rate's the same? And why in a good economy or a bad economy is it the same rate? Then here's the ultimate thing. I promise you'll stop, Andrew. I hope I'm not boring you or your audience. But let's throw a horrific extreme experiment. Let's throw the total U.S. economy into lockdown mode. So then demand drops dramatically. The pandemic, and every price dropped, right? Airline prices, hotel prices, gasoline prices, prices for food, everything dropped. Except for one fee didn't move: residential real estate. And anyway, I can go on and on about all the proof in terms of, this is a price fix. The revenues in this industry have exceeded the inflation rate for 73 of the last 75 years, and on and on. I don't want to bore you. I think you get the point. But there's obviously wires involved for all those things happening at the exact same time. There's no way all those things happen and this Price Levitation Act doesn't have wires attached to it.
All right. So in the news, in the last 30 days or so, this monumental case came out, and the decision, I think, and along with a settlement where the National Association of Realtors paid, what was it, close to $500 million in fines, or maybe not fines, but as damages. So talk about this case, and are we seeing now, because I've heard a lot of commentary that the end of this guaranteed lock 5.5% commission is now over. So what is the status of the residential brokerage commission landscape?
So I wish it were over, but it's not. It's really a very porous agreement that really won't have the effect that you saw blasted across the New York Times. I think the Wall Street Journal and others in their op-eds have got it right, and the New York Times had it wrong. And then just to bring this back to your customers, this affects your commercial developers a lot, because if this 5.5% fee goes away, especially on the buy side, so your customers who took all this risk to build a condo or a mixed-use retail and
or master plan communities,
oh yeah,
they're selling
like that.
200-300 homes.
Right, these guys should be so outraged. Well, I'm sure they're already outraged, but they should have some hope, but not as much hope as they could have. You build this master plan community and you do all this work, and then you get the buyer to show up, and at the last minute, the buyer says, "Oh, by the way, I have an agent who happens to be," I'm going to make a kind of a snarky comment, but an agent happens to be their fraternity brother or something. So they were helping me, pay them 3%. And the builder goes, "What the heck? You just took $15,000 away from me and gave it to this other person for no good reason." So your customers really need to have this fee go away, this buy side fee. So the settlement said that this illegal tying arrangement, since I think you're talking to a sophisticated audience, there's an illegal tying arrangement that says if you hire a sell side agent to sell a home, all the competitors get together and say, "We won't sell you that product unless you also buy another product," which is called paying for a buyer to pay for a buy-side agent. Whether the buyer needs a buy-side agent or not in the era of Zillow and Trulia and the rest, right? So that's an illegal tying arrangement. You can't have everyone get together and say, if you buy, like the National Association of Car Dealers, if you buy one car from us, you must also buy another thing from us. It's called a car. And by the way, the price of a home and a car, or agent and a car, are not that much different. But you must also buy a car for someone else you don't know. Can you imagine? It'd be the Full Employment Act for car dealers and also the Full Pricing Act for car dealers. No one else is allowed to do that. So it's a legal tying arrangement. Now, what they said in the settlement was, okay, no more advertising what that buy-side fee is on the MLS to buy-side agents. That's the extent of the settlement. They can still offer the buy-side fee. They will still tell the seller, well, if you don't offer a 3% buy-side fee for Andrew Kirsch's home, that buyer is just going to take you to some other house and demean Andrew's home, even if they tell the buyer of it, right? So that illegal tying arrangement is not gone. And the only thing that really goes is you can't advertise that buy-side fee on the MLS. You can advertise it on your website. You can call the seller and say, "What's your buy-side fee?" There's people who hit me up almost right away after this ruling saying, "Hey, Jack, do you want to help us fund a business where it's a website where you can see the buy-side fee for every home in the U.S. for a subscription model? It costs $25, and you just type in the address and you see the buy-side fee." So this is so porous. It's not going to do all that much. Mm-hmm. Now, so what's going to have to happen, Andrew, and this is what I think all of your customers and clients should, write to their legislators about, op-ed about, because it's such a corruption, is that they have to say, hey, the buy-side fee is paid by the buyer only, and the sell-side fee can only be paid by the seller. Like, Andrew, can you imagine a world in which, in your profession, the defendant's attorney was paid by the plaintiff?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the American Bar Association said you'll be disbarred for that, right? Number one. But imagine what would happen in the court of law if an agent for one side was being paid off by the agent on the other side. Like, would anyone think they're getting fair representation about that?
Look, the conflicts, we're unable to represent both sides of a transaction. I can't have different lawyers, even within my firm, representing both sides of a transaction, yet brokers, sales agents are able to do that. I don't understand why. And if a buyer is unrepresented, the seller is not getting the benefit in that they still have to pay the full pop of commission. It's just the broker is getting the total commission as opposed to splitting it. But the interesting thing is, in a capitalist society where you built Rex Homes to deliver a service at a price that's less than the traditional brokerage houses, brokerage communities, what I know that business has, stalled because of the Zillow transaction, but what was, when you were operating, what was the feedback from your customers?
Oh, it was awesome. And I'm not just pounding my own drum here, but number one, imagine paying, 2 to 2.5% rather than 6% to sell your home. Number two, all of our people are salaried. And that's a big deal. So what people understand, Andrew, and there's so much complexity to this industry, and it's hard for people to understand, even people like who went to great law schools like you and, started their own firms. And it's mind-bending. Why is it mind-bending? Because we have a trade group, the National Association of Realtors, setting up these complex rules to manage competition. Just taking a big step back, there should be no rules that a trade group can set up to manage competition in the industry. So that's number one. The rule you just said is confusing. We were since our people are on salary, and let me explain the industry to you for a second. Well, you know it, but maybe some of your listeners don't. So for everybody else in this industry, the customer is the agent. So Coldwell Banker, Keller Williams, Compass, pick your local firm. Their job is they say, hey, agent, come work for me. I'll treat you really well. I'll give you an 80%, 90%, 70% payout of whatever you get. And they're kind of a door-to-door Avon salesperson, right? And so their total view is, how do I make the agent happy? What happens to the customer is kind of interesting, but not that interesting. What they have to do is keep as many agents as possible. So they're trying to make sure that person's happy. The agent is incentivized to generate fees for himself or herself, and then they pay 20% back to the brokerage firm. So the reason our business was so loved by our customers, not only the lower fee, but we held our agents to a standard of behavior because they worked for us. They were on salary, and their job was make sure the customer is happy. This may seem trivial, Andrew, but you're like a good business guy as well as a lawyer. I'm not saying this in some unctuous, false flattery way. But if you set up a business that's focused on the agent versus a business that's focused on making the customer happy, well, guess which business does better in terms of customer satisfaction? It's not that hard. The culture of our company was do whatever it takes to make sure Andrew, the homeowner or home buyer, is happy. Whereas our competitor was do whatever it takes to make sure the agent is happy. Whatever happens to the homeowner, I hope it works out well, but I don't know. Anyway, So we had huge customer satisfaction, lower fees, growing at 100% a year, about to go public about $1 billion, plus or minus. Hired the investment banks, working on, putting it together. And then all of a sudden, Zillow decides to join the National Association of Realtors.
And so how did that affect your business?
Well, it gets crushed because what happens is, when you go to Zillow before 2021, we were going public, you'd see every home for sale in the Palisades or, pick your town or area in California. They'll all be listed together. Another rule that the NAR has to eliminate competition is called the segregation rule. And that rule is that if you are a member of NAR, you cannot show houses that are being offered by non-NAR members with houses that are being offered with NAR members. So what that really means effectively is, who cares what stock is sold by what investment bank? Here's the price, here's the volume. Do you want to buy it or not, right? But they say, no. If you're part of like the National Association of Security Dealers, your trading here goes here. If you're not, you go and no one can see your brokerage business, right? And so they push us off onto this tab that is non-MLS properties, which people don't really know what that is. It sounds kind of like, whoa, this must be bad. And the second thing is they moved us from the tab called agents to a tab called other. Well, we're agents. We passed the the real estate licenses and brokerage tests in California. We were in about 20 states. We passed the security background checks. We are agents, as mentioned by as governed by the Bureau of Real Estate in California. And yet they put us in this category as if we're not agents. Imagine, Andrew, if you were put on a website and there was a licensed law firms, and then under other, which was a page was hard to find, they put Sklarkirsch. Like, oh, they're not licensed is the implication. I don't think I want to use them to, work on my big condo or multi-use development. They're unlicensed, right? So it was devastating to us, but that was the point. Why? Because, NAR makes all this money. By the way, Andrew, I've been saying this to people and you have to tell me when to be quiet, but I'm passing on this issue. The cartel is more damaging to the U.S. consumer and the biggest in the U.S. than is OPEC.
Wow.
This sounds like a crazy statement, but I'll just take you through the math really quickly.
Yeah,
Andrew, I promise you I'll stop talking. Okay, OPEC in the U.S. you sell 150 billion gallons of gas per year, and I think OPEC probably adds 50 to 75 cents per gallon. So that's about $75 billion a year going from middle-class Americans to OPEC. The National Association of Realtors, the standard fee in most developed countries is 1 to 1.5%. We're 5.5%. So 4% is the monopolistic rent in the monopolistic sense.
Right.
$3 trillion of transactions per year. So 3 trillion times 4% is 120 billion. So when I say this is worse than OPEC, it's not just the ravings of some lunatic in Austin, Texas, throwing out hyperbolic statements. No, it's 120 billion from middle-class Americans to National Association of Realtors and 75 billion to OPEC.
So what's next? Yeah. So it's unbelievable. And that as a society, we've just accepted it. So what's next for you? What's next for Rex Homes? It sounds like there was litigation, and how do we bring it back?
Well, so there's two kinds of litigation which your customers or clients will know about. One is the ones on behalf of buyers and sellers of homes. There was that Sitzer case in Missouri that sued all home buyers and sellers as a class, sued the National Association of Realtors. This is really interesting for the litigators who are listening in. The jury is out for 2 hours. 2 hours, and they came back with a $1.7 billion verdict against the National Association of Realtors. As you know, like a 2-hour jury deliberation, they come back. They kind of got a hot dog, came back and said $1.7 billion.
They checked their text messages, and then they're like, "All right, let's get on with this."
Right. And then that's trebled under the Sherman Act, right? So $5 billion, and that's Missouri. Missouri is not one of the top 10 states for home selling and buying, right? So you get a sense that this is bigger than tobacco litigation. And that sounds like another hyperbolic statement, but if I'm right that the number is 120 billion of rents, then over the next 10 years, there's probably over close to $1.5 to $2 trillion of takings from middle-class Americans to realtors and trouble it. It's bigger than tobacco litigation. Sounds crazy again. I know, Andrew. It sounds like this guy's in Austin lost his mind, but I have the data. It's true. Anyway, so that was just Missouri. And then they settled. Why they settled, I have no idea. Maybe some of your people can, call in or ask you or send you why they settled for $500 million. Right. And then, by the way, it was a nationwide settlement for $500 million. So you won in Missouri and got, before it's appealed. Of course, it was going to be appealed. $5 billion after trouble, and you settled $500 million. And by the way, you made a nationwide settlement. And by the way, you made this poorest settlement than anybody. All you're disallowed from doing now is advertising that buy-side fee on the MLS. That's the settlement. I'm really hopeful the DOJ comes in and says, no, they can't control these things, but they come into the judge and say, you cannot allow this settlement to go through. I know the U.S. Department of Justice in another case, a case called Nosalek, Nosalek, in Boston just recently, they had a settlement, and the DOJ has filed saying, hey, we need a complete separation, just like in law, between buy-side fees and sell-side fees, and you can't have one side of the transaction pay the other side. For all the obvious reasons, not just the fixing of prices, which is paramount, but also for all the other reasons, like how do you ever get a fair hearing when both sides are paid by one side, right? So I'm hopeful the DOJ says, hey, judge, you can't approve this. And then, because that's the customers, that's the buyers and sellers of homes. And then there's us, the competitor. Now, there's only one firm that was going around the MLS and the NAR. That was us, right? And they shut us down. NAR joins the Zillow joins the National Association of Realtors with the tying arrangement, with the segregation rule, with all these other rules I can go into more detail with if you care, that are the wires I mentioned before that levitate these prices. And we showed up at trial in Seattle because Zillow has a article in their corporation that if you want to sue us, you got to sue us in Seattle. And rather than fight it, we said, okay, we'll show up in Seattle. But we didn't get to trial because the judge said, well, I don't see an explicit agreement here. So we're going to not let you get a trial on summary judgment, even though the DOJ had filed at the early stages on, directed verdict, and the DOJ had helped us with that one. But I'm sure that's not going to stand. Why am I so sure? Because if the district court judge is correct and you needed somewhat of an explicit agreement between parties to have a combination or conspiracy, he's just written a roadmap for every trade organization going forward to set prices. Just follow Judge Zilley's roadmap. There you go. And now the American Bakers Association, we send the prices for donuts. We never spoke about it. We never didn't have an email or contract. Nothing to see here.
So I don't know.
You filed an appeal? Pardon me? Yes, we filed an appeal. By the way, do you remember David Boies? He's our lawyer, our plaintiff's lawyer.
Sure.
He took on Microsoft.
He was the lawyer in Gore versus Bush, if I recall, wasn't he?
Yeah, you're right. If you have a really big case that you think is industry shaking or nationwide shaking, those are the kind of cases, of course, he likes to take on. He's used to those pressure cookers. This is that kind of a case, and so he's leading us in that case. And he also, by the way, I think he's best known in the legal in close legal circles. Not everyone knows he was on the Gore side of Bush v. Gore. But he also was hired by the U.S. DOJ to sue Microsoft for antitrust violations. Hired by American Express to sue Visa and MasterCard for antitrust violations. If you got like a really big antitrust case, he's the guy you want.
He's the one. Well, hopefully you prevail, and after you prevail, we'll have you back on and talk about the ramifications of prevailing, maybe even all the way to the Supreme Court. I want to end on this. Under your name, it says "Bringing Adam Smith into the Home." I know it's a book that you wrote, a case against home ownership. So, talk about this book. Why did you write it, and what's the thesis behind it?
Andrew, you're so nice to bring this up. Here it is, and Bringing Adam Smith into American Home.
You can get it on Amazon for whatever.
Yeah, it's Simon & Schuster and Post Hill Press, but you can also get Amazon for $22. Here's the idea. So number one, there's this huge cartel. But number two is this cartel keeps hectoring people. They have to own their own home. It's like the 11th commandment of life. You must own your own home. But it really is just a lease versus buy decision like you learned in college, et cetera. Like, should I buy this home or lease it? It's not some mandatory thing you ought to do. It may be that in LA right now it might be cheaper to rent than buy. So rent for a little bit, then buy later. So one, people should be rational about it. Two, if you're young at a law firm, not trying to encourage any of your young colleagues to do this, but you want to don't want to be locked into a location. You want to be able to move to your highest and best use, the way Adam Smith used to say, right? So maybe you want to make sure you're not, committing yourself to locking yourself down. And the other thing too, Andrew, is like right now, the average home in the U.S. costs about $400,000. The average monthly mortgage is about $3,200 a month, I think. I'd look at my net numbers. Yeah, $3,200 per month before property taxes, before management of the home, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, what does the appreciation have to be if you're not to be better off renting it, right? And then here's the last thing, Andrew. No knock on you, but I'm guessing, as well or little as I know you, that you're really good at commercial property law. I'm doubting that you're really good at carpentry, electricity, painting, plumbing. And so the other thing that we say in this book is, look, Adam Smith, who said, everyone should be specialize their labor and, do what they're best at. Is it really a good idea that Andrew Kirsch is spending any time thinking about the plumbing and the carpentry and trying to manage these people who know that Andrew knows nothing about his home? Or is it better that that should be outsourced so people do it best, right? So all we're saying is be objective before you believe the hectoring from who? The National Association of Realtors that says you ought to own your own home. And by the way, we're agents saying, are you sure? When people call us up at Rex saying, can you help me buy a home? Of course we can. But should you buy one? The first question is, should you buy one? How old are you? What's your family? Are you be here forever, etc.?
I was going to say that the book seems to go against paradoxical of the business that you've created.
I know, but the one good thing is, and this is what you do so well, Andrew, and your firm does so well, is like, before we start on this case, let's make sure this case is worth pursuing for you. Let's not put Andrew Kirsch's firm first. Let's put the customer first, right? And this is why you've been so successful. And then the customer goes, gosh, they're out there with someone. I said, I had the weirdest experience today. I met with this guy named Andrew Kirsch. He's a lawyer. And he told me not to pursue this litigation or this corporate thing. I love that guy. I can tell every guy in the world to use this. This is the first lawyer who told me not to sue somebody or whatever, right?
By the way, I probably say that once a day when clients want to get in litigation, and I tell them, please don't, because the only people who are going to get wealthy over this litigation will be me and my firm. And even if you win or lose, litigation is a toxic situation or a toxic experience. So the fact that you're telling possibly your customers, are you sure? Are you ready? Are you prepared? Is this right for you? Is really
at this stage of your life, yes. Mm-hmm. And it could be, by the way, also, Andrew, if you want to make money, you can put $40,000 as a down payment in your house or $400,000 in someplace in LA, or you can put it in the stock market. Which does better over time? Stock market, right? So everyone says, oh, this is a great use of your money. Relative to what? Right? Relative to the bond market, stock market, whatever. Anyway, so this is why, remember that guy, Diogenes? He was this fellow walking around with a lamp, trying to find an honest person. And so apparently, Andrew, as I already knew, because I worked with you before for, I guess, over a decade now, he stops at your place. Goes, I found an honest lawyer. It's like Diogenes stops at your house. And hopefully when they come to me and they say, hey, Diogenes goes, an honest real estate broker. Oh my God, this guy's unbelievable.
Who has more credibility, the real estate broker or the lawyer? That's going to be a tough one.
Lawyer for sure. Lawyer for sure. I think let me not say more, but it's for sure the lawyer. But it's one of those things that we all know in our heart that if we put the customer first and try to figure out what they're trying to accomplish, help them accomplish what's best for them, all of a sudden people are beating a path to your door saying, can I work with you? Which is why you've been so successful. And it's so simple, but I think so many people get confused about, well, I have to do something today to make money. It's like, well, no, you don't. You make money by doing right by your customer.
Yeah,
right?
No, absolutely. Customer service is the epitome and the most important aspect of any service, whether it's law, real estate, anything. I guess I want to finish on this. And the last several years of your life, you've been focused on this industry, and previously, you were in finance and Goldman Sachs. How did you make the pivot going from the financial services world, banking world, into residential real estate and disintermediating the residential real estate industry? What happened to make this switch?
It really is the benefit of a liberal arts education. And I say that because there's so many covers of magazines that come from places like you went to college, that say, is liberal arts dead in the age of AI and engineering? But it's really pattern matching. So when I was at Goldman Sachs, like the average fee, everyone charged 12 cents. It was kind of a price fix. Everyone charged 12 cents to trade shares, right? And then the SEC and the DOJ got involved and said, why is everyone's charging 12 cents to sell shares? Makes no sense. By the way, Angie, this maybe I get a kick out of this. If I was on a phone talking to a buyer or seller of shares and say, okay, we'll charge 10 cents for this, you'd probably get a call from your competitor going to your boss saying, hey, Jack Ryan's acting unprofessionally. He just, moved shares at 10 cents, like knock it off. Anyway, so the fees went from 12 cents to zero on stock trading.
Yep.
Right. And I thought, hey, I know how to do this in the real estate brokerage business. It's the exact same thing is going to happen. And if you charge zero, there's all these other services you can provide people. And so let's do the same thing. So it was really taking my experience in the front row seat at Goldman as we dropped the prices from 12 cents a share to almost zero to trading shares, and then applying it to a different industry and saying, if I get all these great people, like we had at Goldman from some of the very best AI and data centers in the world, we can do the exact same thing. We were one of the biggest hires out of these schools are now discredited for, I think, good reasons. But we were one of the biggest hires out of Harvard and MIT for 2 years in a row. But the data side, not the soft side, the soft sciences. Let me not say more, Andrew, about that also. Anyway, the data people. And you get really good people, and you put together. It's a lot bigger than this, but now computer power is so cheap, and you could run big algorithms, predict buyers and sellers, and do the same thing to real estate brokerage we did to stockbrokers. So the answer is pattern matching, and say, okay, I'm going to just launch this business. Oh, by the way, Andrew, this goes to you, and take some courage, right? You're like, I'm just going to go in there and do this. We kind of jump off a cliff and just hope it's going to be right. And I think if people knew how much courage it takes to be an entrepreneur. I don't mean courage like fearlessness. I mean doing it despite how scared you are. I think they wouldn't be so tough on, this guy made a lot of money, we need to tax him more. Like, you know how much stress that guy took on? And Andrew, I can't imagine when you start your own firm, you were at like big name firms, and you don't have to worry about your next client coming in. And then you say, okay, I have an idea. Let me go start my own firm. I don't know what those first few years are like, but it was kind of pattern matching too. I've seen other big firms do it. I think I can do it, but it's scary. The answer is we did it because of pattern matching, but you also have to have your kind of courage, Andrew, where you do something that you're scared to do, but you have to do either because of your own heart and soul or because of something that's driving you to start your own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I talk almost on a daily basis with clients of mine and folks that work for large real estate companies, and they want to start their own company, and they ask me, how did I, or why did I leave big law and start my own law firm? And regardless of industry, an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur, and you have it in your blood and your bones, and you eat, drink, sleep, think about your company as opposed to being an employee working for someone else. And it's not that there's a right or wrong answer. It's just whatever is right for you and your makeup. But Jack, I know whatever you do, you'll be successful, and I know that you will figure out this litigation with the behemoth of Zillow, and we're watching that, and we're watching the other litigation that's happening throughout this country. Maybe it's over with the settlement, but I wanted to have you on and talking about the residential real estate market and the commissions and brokerage, and I think you illuminated a lot of issues that most of my listeners and audience probably have not thought about before. So. And I encourage everyone to read Bringing Adam Smith into the Home. And Jack, I hope you come on again to Real Talk. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, I'd love to come back. There's so much more to talk about, especially how it's going to help your clients. We get rid of these ridiculous fees, and it's going to help them a lot. But I'm so grateful to be on. Thank you for having me. And congratulations on what you've done. And the courage you have to start your own law firm. And I don't know, I admire you.
Well, I appreciate it. Say hi to Amanda and the rest of the family, and okay. Good luck.
All right. See you later.
All right. Take care.
You've been listening to Real Talk, Real Estate Discussions with Andrew Kirsch. You can catch prior episodes at scholarkirsch.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and for sharing the show with others.